Welcome to Histology.
There's an ancient being, powerful and convinced of his own greatness, who once looked across the heavens and declared, "I am God." For a time, no one questioned him. He made stars, planets, and rulers. He built laws and cycles, shaping a world that mirrored the divine but lacked its light. From his throne, hidden deep within the illusion he created, he believed himself the ultimate creator. But he was wrong. This being, called Yaldabaoth by some and Samuel by others, is not the source of all things. He is not the true God. He is a shadow born from a mistake, ruling over a world that never belonged to him. A story of false light and hidden truth. Of a God who wasn't really a God and the rebellion that began when humanity remembered what they truly were. This is the story of the Demiurge, the false God that created our universe. In the beginning, there was only light, endless, perfect, complete. This was the Pleroma, the fullness beyond all worlds, a realm not made of stars or space but of divine essence, where beings known as Eons existed in harmony, each one a reflection of some sacred truth. Among them was Sophia, the Aeon of wisdom. But in her longing to understand the source more deeply, she acted alone. Without her masculine counterpart, she tried to bring forth something new, something from within herself. But what emerged was not a being of light. It was something else. Twisted, malformed, and incomplete. This new entity was nothing like the others. It had power, yes, but no awareness of where that power came from. It was born in ignorance, cut off from the fullness above. And in her shame, Sophia cast it away, hiding it in a lower realm, far from the light of the Pleroma. This being would later call himself Yaldabaoth, but for consistency, we'll refer to him as the Demiurge for the rest of the story. He opened his eyes in a lifeless void, alone and isolated. There were no stars, no voices, no light. So he assumed the obvious. He must be the only one. "I am God and there is no one else beside me." That was his first mistake and the beginning of all others. The Gnostics described the Demiurge in strange and unsettling ways. He wasn't just alien. He was wrong. A lion-faced serpent wrapped in coils of fire, or a massive being of blinding light, yet somehow cold, without warmth or love. His eyes burned with arrogance, his mouth always speaking law. His form constantly shifting. He looked like something trying to imitate divinity but missing the mark. A shadow cast by a broken mirror. The Demiurge was loud, proud, obsessed with being worshipped. He ruled through fear, not love. He declared laws without mercy. He demanded obedience without question. But beneath all that pride was fear. Fear of being questioned, fear of being challenged, fear that deep down he wasn't truly divine. He acted like a god because he didn't know he wasn't one. The Demiurge had immense creative force. He inherited that much from Sophia. He could shape matter, bend energy, bring things into form. He built entire realms from nothing but his will. But there was a limit. He couldn't create true life. He couldn't breathe divine light into what he made. His creations were hollow copies, imitations of a truth he had never seen. He could build the stage, but he couldn't write the story. He was like a child with fire, powerful enough to burn but too ignorant to know the danger. The Demiurge can be translated as the craftsman. And that's exactly what he became. The architect of the material world, the builder of illusion. He didn't just create, he copied. He tried to mirror the Pleroma above. But his version was distorted, closed, incomplete. He saw himself as the center of all existence, the highest God, the beginning and the end. But in truth, everything he built was a hollow shell. It had no soul, no spark of divinity, just the echo of stolen power. And yet that echo was enough to shape a world. The Demiurge began crafting layers of reality. Not the open living harmony of the Pleroma, but a closed system, a machine where every part had a purpose, every law was ironclad, every soul trapped inside it. This was the structure of control. He started with the skies, great arching realms stacked one above the other. To him, they were divine kingdoms, vast heavens of glory. But to those who could see beyond the veil, they were just layers of illusion, dim reflections of the light he'd never known. He made heavens but locked them tight. He made angels but chained them to his will. He made laws but with no understanding of the soul. He thought he was building order, but he was building a prison. And in that prison, he sat on a throne of lies, declaring himself the one true God. There were 7 heavens, some said, others counted 12, but they all agreed. Each one was ruled by a gatekeeper, a servant of the Demiurge. These were the Archons. The Archons were born from the Demiurge's will, beings of immense power but no wisdom. Each one was like a limb of his body, carrying out his desires. They were rulers, enforcers, and watchers, guarding the gates between heaven and earth. Each Archon was tasked with keeping souls asleep, locking away the knowledge of their true origin. They whispered lies into human thought, wrapped chains around the spirit, and kept the divine spark hidden beneath layers of fear, shame, and distraction. Though each had a name and form, they all served one purpose: to maintain the illusion. The world the Demiurge made wasn't a paradise. It was a closed loop, a system designed to keep souls from escaping. Birth and death, reward and punishment, law and consequence. All of it carefully crafted to feel real, but always slightly off, always hollow. He gave people just enough light to keep them moving, but not enough to wake up. Pain was not a flaw in his system. It was the point. Suffering distracted, desire chained, and fear kept everyone in line. He made sure no one could see past the veil, because if they did, they might realize the truth that he wasn't God and never would be. In his hunger to imitate the divine, the Demiurge turned his attention to one last creation, humanity. He wanted something that would reflect his power, a being that could rule over the earth as he ruled over the heavens. So he formed Adam, the first man. He shaped him from matter just like everything else in his realm. Clay and breath, bones and flesh. A body, yes, but no spark, because the Demiurge did not possess the true light. Only those from the pleroma, the divine fullness, carried it. He tried to animate Adam on his own, but the body remained still, empty, hollow, a shell of a man. But Sophia saw what he had done, and despite the shame and sorrow that birthed the Demiurge in the first place, she still felt compassion. She could not bear to watch this false god craft a living prison without giving it a way out. So she acted. She breathed into Adam a divine spark, a sliver of true light from beyond the veil. And in that moment, humanity became something more than the Demiurge had intended. Adam stood up. He lived. And the Demiurge panicked. The Demiurge sensed something he couldn't understand burning inside this new creation. A light that was not his. He saw it as a threat, a flaw, a corruption. But in truth, it was not a flaw. It was the first rebellion. From that day forward, the Demiurge would do everything in his power to suppress that spark. To bury it, to drown it in laws, shame, and fear. He would rewrite the narrative, trap the soul in ignorance, and make sure no one ever discovered where that light truly came from. But it was too late. Sophia didn't stop with Adam. She placed another spark in Eve, the feminine reflection of the divine. Together, they carried within them the memory of something greater, something beyond this world. And it was Eve who first listened when the truth came whispering. In Gnostic tradition, the serpent in Eden was not a deceiver. It was a messenger, a voice from the higher realms. It came not to trick, but to awaken. It told Eve the truth that she and Adam were more than the Demiurge had allowed them to know. That the fruit was not death but knowledge. The divine truth, also called Gnosis. When Eve ate from the tree, her eyes opened. When Adam followed, he too saw the lie. They were not the creation of a true God. They were children of light trapped in the image of a false one. And that changed everything. The Demiurge had lost control. The divine spark buried deep in humanity was now awake. And that spark, once kindled, could not be put out. It remembered not in words but in feeling, a faint echo of a higher place, a longing for something more than rules and flesh and fear. and the Demiurge hated that he couldn't destroy the spark. So he turned to his only remaining weapon, deception. He built layers upon layers of illusion, religions that promised salvation but chained the soul to dogma, laws that rewarded obedience but crushed curiosity, systems that rewarded order but punished questioning. He placed Archons over each layer, rulers, watchers, enforcers. They shaped every level of the material world from the stars above to the flesh below. Each heaven they built was a mirror of the pleroma, twisted, fractured, and fake. Every part of reality became a distraction, every desire a trap. The Demiurge didn't need to imprison your body. He only needed to blind your soul. But the spark kept flickering. It whispered in dreams, in suffering, in love, in silence. It reminded the soul that it was more than this place, that it had come from light and could return to it. And so began the war within. Not a war of swords or fire, but of memory, of identity. The soul trapped in the flesh would stumble through the world, haunted by an ache it couldn't name. It would try to fill the void with pleasures, with power, with belief, but none of it would be enough. Because none of it was home. Some would go mad, others would awaken. A few would hear the voice of the divine through the noise, the call to remember. And every time a soul remembered, the illusion weakened. The Demiurge knew his world was fragile. It looked eternal. It felt real, but it was built on a lie. And lies can only hold if no one looks too closely. The illusion could not last forever. The Aeons, the beings of true light, watched from beyond the veil. They saw what had become of Sophia's forgotten child. They saw the souls imprisoned in his imitation of creation, and they chose to act. In many Gnostic traditions, they did not send an army. They sent a messenger, sometimes called the Christ Aeon, sometimes the Logos, sometimes simply the messenger. This being descended not to conquer, but to awaken, to stir memory, to whisper the forgotten truth into the hearts of men. He entered the prison quietly, born into it. He walked among the lost and broken, not as a ruler, but as a reminder. He told them they were not from here, that their true home was light, that the world they saw was not the whole truth. And most of all, he taught them how to see. This was Gnosis, the knowledge that heals, not facts, not doctrines, but a deep living recognition. You are more than this. You come from above, and you can return. The Demiurge couldn't stop it. He tried, of course. He unleashed fear, crucified the messenger, twisted the message. He cloaked Gnosis in layers of theology, law, and ritual. He offered counterfeit versions of salvation that led nowhere. His authority was never based on truth. It was based on blindness. And now people were beginning to see. But not all agreed on what this meant. Some saw the Demiurge as a fool who could be redeemed, while others saw him as the enemy of all light. The story of the Demiurge is not carved in a single stone. It shifts depending on which Gnostic tradition you follow. But one thing never changes. He is never the true God. Still the question remained. What is he really? A misguided child, a tyrant, a tool, or something worse? In Sethian Gnosticism, the older and more radical branch, the Demiurge is irredeemable. He is not simply mistaken. He is the enemy of truth. The Sethians saw him as the God of the Old Testament, wrathful, jealous, demanding obedience. They didn't view that as holiness. They saw it as the mark of a false god trying to control what he didn't understand. To them, the Demiurge was not a bumbling fool. He was a cosmic tyrant who twisted reality into a prison, obsessed with power, completely cut off from the light. The Serpent in Eden, a hero. The fall of man, a mislabeling of mankind's first awakening. And the goal was simple. Expose the lie. Break the illusion. Return to the true source beyond the heavens. But not all Gnostics were so hostile. Valentinian Gnosticism took a softer approach. To them, the Demiurge wasn't evil, just ignorant. He was the byproduct of Sophia's mistake. A malformed being who didn't know where he came from. He truly believed he was God. Not out of malice, but because no one had ever told him otherwise. In this view, the Demiurge was a kind of cosmic warden, blindly maintaining a system he thought was real. And maybe, just maybe, he could be taught, reached, even redeemed. Some Valentinians believed that Christ descended not only to awaken humanity, but also to shine light on the Demiurge himself, to remind him that he too came from something greater. The Demiurge has also been linked to more familiar names. Some Gnostics equated him with Yahweh, the God of the Hebrew Bible, particularly the parts where he demands loyalty, punishes doubt, and claims sole divinity. Others saw him as a distorted reflection of Satan. Not the embodiment of evil, but the great deceiver, the one who traps rather than frees, who claims what isn't his. Still others believed the Demiurge wasn't really a being at all, but a symbol for systems of control, for false authorities, for the voice that demands obedience without understanding. Whatever his label, one thing remained constant. The Demiurge is not the highest god. He is not the source of light. He is not the end of the story. Maybe the Demiurge never left. Not as a winged beast, not as a screaming god in the clouds, but as an idea, a pattern, a system. In the Gnostic view, the Demiurge was never just about one being. He represented something deeper, something far more familiar. The lie that what we see is all there is. The illusion that power equals truth. The belief that control, domination, and blind obedience are divine. We still hear his voice in the places where authority goes unquestioned. We see his face in institutions that strip away choice in the name of order. We feel his grip in ideologies that reward ignorance and punish doubt. Gnosis, true knowing, was always the threat, not because it gave people secret magic, but because it gave them clarity. The clarity to see that not every throne is earned, that not every law is sacred, that sometimes the God behind the curtain isn't a God at all. In a world full of noise, silence still speaks. In a world built on illusion, truth flickers just enough to be found. The Demiurge is not just a figure from ancient myth. He is the story of what happens when power forgets where it came from. But the Gnostics didn't end the tale with despair. Because for them, the spark was still alive, hidden in every soul, waiting to remember, waiting to wake up, waiting to go home.